Well, I'm going to get going. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our new features webinar today. For those of you that don't know me, it might just be some of our new clients. My name is Lindy Gerber, and I'll be your facilitator today. So we've had to switch things around a little bit, just in the spirit of the Soccer World Cup. So I've brought in a substitution due to a bit of an injury. So Daniel will be standing in for Bronwyn today. I'd firstly like to share with everyone that our core focus at PPO this year as a company was to ensure that we accelerate on the development side of PPO, the product development side of it. So you would have noticed more and more features coming out quicker than before. And we'll obviously keep pushing to make sure we bring you more features to make sure that your user experience is awesome. So, I mean, the purpose of today's session is to walk you guys through new functionality, as well as at the end of the session, I'll be talking to some of the new features that are still coming that we're already working on. But for today, even though all the features that we're going to be showing you are pretty awesome, the main ones that we want you to focus on or to draw your attention to is the chart widget, as well as the conversations and the feed. We deployed that yesterday. So these are very, very exciting times for us at PPO, and I know the functionality that we'll be sharing with you today will be very, very valuable, you guys. So let's just talk a little bit about the future of widgets in PPO. So initially, PPO was purely built on lists. So you have your project list, you have your issue list, your risk list. So what we are doing is moving away from a very structured table-orientated system to having the ability of introducing widgets into PPO. So while PPO has always been good at taking care of your structured data, your portfolio reporting and all of those good things, we wanted to ensure that we also make PPO a bit more customizable in your hands, if I can say it like that, and then obviously also make PPO more collaborative to support, you know, the wider project team. So most of you would remember earlier in this year, I think it was around June, we introduced the table widget where we covered changes related to pages in PPO, improvements to the list pages, the filter controls, and the interactive scan page that we introduced. So at the time, those changes that we introduced didn't seem that valuable at the time, but doing that switch, changing a bit of the architecture of PPO, and introducing that table widget has basically put us on the path for future new widgets in PPO. So on the screen that I'm showing now is just an example of what a homepage could look like in the future, just to give you a view of where we see the widgets going in PPO. So as an example, if you are an executive and you're logging into PPO, it might be a bit more valuable for you to have things like key metric stats on your homepage and things like these donut widgets that, you know, represent the data a bit more visually. If you're a project manager, it might be more valuable for you to have a bit of a, you know, a basic to-do list on the side that you can just tick items off as you go along. We could be introducing, you know, a calendar. You can have a list of actions or issues and risks. So a bit of a combination of everything. So here on the left-hand side is a sort of a sneak peek of the feed that Daniel will be demonstrating. Just to also let you know, the widgets that we have deployed to our user base now is a version of PPO that we've been using for a couple of months now. It has really, really helped our organization a great deal in terms of managing items on PPO. As an example, conversations that Daniel will be sharing with you. It's literally helped us improve in terms of the time that we spend getting items resolved on PPO. So for us, it's really working well. I'm just going to give you a short and sweet of conversations and charts before I hand over to Daniel. So the conversations and feed widget that Daniel will be showcasing allows you the ability to have informal discussions on various items in PPO, like risks, issues, and actions. And that basically, makes PPO more collaborative for your team members. And we see the feed widget going in the future. As an example, let's say a risk, a issue, a project gets updated, that rather pops up in your feed instead of you being bombarded with emails on the side. So that's sort of where we see the feed going in the future. And then the chart widget allows you graphical views on your list pages in PPO. So that sort of alleviates the need of you navigating to a dashboard to get that visual representation of your data. Okay, so I've been chatting quite a bit now. Before I hand over to Daniel, just a heads up that we are going to shoot off a poll while Daniel is busy with his demo. If you guys can please complete that. It's always good for us to know what you guys think of the new features that we're introducing to PPO. I'll also be sharing the PowerPoint as well as the recording after the session, so you don't have to stress about that. And then also, while Daniel is showcasing the functionality, feel free to use the chat on the side. If you have any questions about the functionality that is chatting through, or whatever the case may be, we'll field all those questions on the side for you. After Daniel's done his demo, we'll just switch over to Q&A and then we take it from there. Over to you, Daniel.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindy, for that introduction. And I think in the spirit of the substitution and the World Cup reference, you guys are going to have to give me a few minutes just to get warmed up. So I'm going to start with an introduction. Those that don't know me, my name's Daniel. I am a PPO support consultant on the PPO support desk, i.e. known as the Ninjas. Been working for PPO for over 7 years now, so I think that about wraps it up for my warm up there quickly and an introduction. Let me start by sharing my screen. Can you guys confirm that you can see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, Daniel.
Awesome. Okay, so my role today is going to be about giving you an overview of these features. We hope, or should I say, we trust that you are going to find these features valuable. The first feature we're discussing is chart widgets. And what we see on screen at the moment is the first type of chart widget, and that is specifically a donut chart. Now, how the donut chart works is we highlight with these slices, if I hover over, that we can see 10 of our projects are in the executing phase. Because we're highlighting a count of projects by phase, we can see 10 are in executing, 1 is in benefit tracking, 2 is in initiating, etc. On the right hand side, you have your legend. When you click on your legend value, we strike through the text of the legend value and remove it from that donut graph. Likewise, if we were to click on it again, we incorporate that slice back into the donut graph. But the really cool thing about the donut chart, the really cool thing about the donut chart is how it's linked to the list page on the left-hand side. So if I were to click on this slice highlighting 10 projects and executing, it simulates a drill through. So what PPO then does is it includes a filter pull for phase equals executing, and what we're now viewing is those 10 projects within the executing phase. So we could further drill through into each of those projects. Likewise, if I were to remove that filter pull, my donut chart then updates to include all the slices. So there are 2 ways in which you can configure your donut charts or your chart widgets in general, because there's another type called a tree map. The 2 ways in which you can do so is one, on your own accord, setting your own user preference. The second way is for the PPO administrators to set up what we call the default setting. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that shortly, but let's jump into how you can configure or set up your own donut charts. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate my tab so that I can make reference to elements, and I'm going to use the settings icon in the top right hand corner. Most of you should be familiar with this page with the introduction of the list widget earlier on in the year. You can add and remove columns, and you can reorder the order of columns displayed on your list page. In addition, you can change how many items you display on a list page before needing to navigate to the second page. But while we're all here with our eyes glued on the screen is this new section called charts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this count by phase donut chart from scratch. So I'm going to remove the one that's currently there, and I'm going to add our first donut chart. The field I want to select is the phase field. We simply want a count of projects per phase. So our operator stays as is, being the count, and let's pause for a moment and talk about the palettes. Now you'll always have two options regarding your palette choice. You'll have a default palette on the left hand side and your skin palette on the right hand side. Your skin palette will always pull accents from the skin that you've applied. So if we just use that other tab, you can see our skin is green and blue. So the accents that we can pull for that palette is accents of green and blue. The default palette is a special palette. And why I say it's special is it's based on the field that you select. So the field we've selected is the phase field. The phase field is what we call a color-coded custom list. So each value has its own color associated to it. So we can pull those colors and use that in a palette. So we're going to use that as our palette for this donut chart. We simply then click on add, and it adds that donut chart to our settings page. I want to add another one just to demonstrate some other points. So we're going to say add another donut chart. And in this case, we're going to select Project Manager. Now, because Project Manager isn't a color-coded custom list, we don't have a color associated with each individual. We have the choice between PPO's default color palette and the skin palette. I'm a bit biased towards the skin palette, so you might see me using it quite often throughout the course. So I'm going to use that as a demonstration. And we're going to show percentages. Percentages allow us to see a percentage label on the slice of the donut chart. Now that I've configured two donut charts, I can click on save. It will refresh my page and load those two donut charts. Again, the same concepts apply as previously with regards to the linking to your list page and the behavior of the legend. But what we can see in the bottom donut chart is the percentage. So 20% of the portfolio is assigned to Peter Franklin. Once again, if we drill through, we can see those three projects assigned to Peter Franklin, and we can remove that filter pull to get our original graph back. Okay, so on to the part for the PPO administrators. So the PPO administrators have the ability to set up what we call default settings. But before we go there, let's talk about what default settings are. The default settings are the settings that are used when a user logs in for the very first time. So it's that first impression. We all know first impressions are important. So it's that first impression a user gets when logging into PPO and accessing a project list page. It also serves as a mechanism for a user to restore back to the defaults. So if a user goes a bit crazy with adding a whole bunch of columns and a whole bunch of charts and they just want to restore back to the defaults, they can do so via the settings page and clicking on Restore Defaults. So if I do that, it will remove the additional graph that we added, keeping the original, which is what we currently have set as our default settings. But now as a PPO administrator, where do you go and set that up? So if you go to Administration, you'll notice we've created a new page called Widget Configuration. What this page shows you is on the left-hand side, we have our list widget and we have our Gantt widget. The list widget comprises of multiple pages within PPO. It comprises of project-related entities like benefits, costs, risks, etc. It also contains administration pages like business rules, custom lists, or data fields. But for today, what we're going to focus on is projects. So on our projects list page, we have set these columns as our default, with this page size indicator as our default and one chart as our default. So say, for example, you as a PPO administrator want to set up some default charts for your user, you would come to the widget configuration page, select which entity you want to configure, and then go and add those charts. So as an example, we're going to add another chart here that is simply the count of projects per department. Now, department is in a color-coded custom list, and I'm going to use the default palette. We can show percentages as well. Click on Add. So we've added it to our default settings. I'm going to click on Submit to submit or finalize that change. And now when I go back to a project list page, you can see because I'm on the default, I get that additional graph, that additional donut chart added to my project list page. Now let's look at some other examples and more importantly, the other chart type. So I'm going to navigate to an issue list page and we're going to create a tree map widget. So again, on settings, this time I'm going to select tree map. My primary field, and watch the palette. My primary field is going to be the priority. There it's gone and grabbed all the color-coded custom list colors for us. And our secondary field is going to be overdue. So there's going to be a lot of red, amber, and green on the page. Okay, so I'm going to click Add, and then I'm going to save those changes. Now what we're looking at is all of our issues grouped in high, medium, low, based on the priority. Within high, we can see that there are 28 that are overdue, 7 that are due soon, and 4 that are not overdue yet. If I were to click on due soon, I then drill through and I can immediately see I myself, Barry Lineker, I can see I've got 2 issues that are coming up and would need some updates on them. Okay, so one last example before we wrap up the chart widgets. And this example comes from a request that commonly appears, and that is, can we not add a subtotal or a grand total to the cost list page, avoiding the need, and you'll see the correlation with Lindy's introduction, avoiding the need to navigate away to reports or dashboards? The answer is you can do so with a donut chart, specifically 2 I'm going to use in my demonstration. So I want to, per category, sum the total budget. I'm going to use that sexy skin palette there. And then I'm going to add another one where we sum per category the actual spent. Again, that skin palette, and click on Save. So now what these 2 donut charts allow me to see is that we have a total operational expenditure budget of 4.2 million. We've spent $750,000 of that budget. What we can do further from this point is we could apply a project filter. So if you've got a specific filter that you like to view for all your reporting projects, you could apply that shared filter. But the power, and this is the remarkable thing about the visualization of data, is I'm going to drill through into one particular project, the fixed admin fee project. And immediately off the bat, we can see we had an operational expenditure budget, but we haven't spent any of it to date. Without summing up or using a grand total or a subtotal, whichever the case may be, without doing any of those calculations on numbers, we can see that represented in a visual form. Now, before I conclude the chart widgets, I just want to make mention that keep your ears and eyes open for the next widget that is coming, and that is what we're calling a key metric widget. Some of you might be familiar with it. We call it a key statistic in our dashboards. In, like, for example, Power BI, it's called a card. It's a rectangular box highlighting some information. So watch out for that one. And to wrap up chart widgets, think about what we are doing. We are reducing your need to navigate away and run a report or dashboard. We are improving your ability to create your own views within the page that you're busy on. So you don't need to navigate away from the page that you're on. And in light of that, I'd like to segue into a small little feature that we've added, and that is the export button. The export button does a similar thing. So previously you would go and set up your filter bar to filter out records that you don't want to see. You would set up your columns that you're specifically focused on, and then you'd have to navigate away to, for example, a cost detail report, apply the same filtering, and once you've got the data, remove some columns from that report. So what we've done with the export buttons is reduce that need or remove that need to navigate away. You can export all columns. So what that would do is export these 4 items that we have based on our filtering and export all the columns from the cost entity. The one below, exporting your current columns, would export this exact view that we can see on screen for these 4 items. Okay, so we're going to switch it up into a different gear,
Sorry,
and we're going to switch it up into a different gear, and we're going to talk about conversations. So let me quickly close that tab.
There's a question there, Daniel.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure, go for it.
May I ask a quick question?
Sure thing.
Why can't we have the total of that phasing in the cost section at the bottom? So, because when we do the phasing, rather than to switch to a dashboard or a graph, we can actually see the total at the bottom to make sure that when we're doing it, it actually just it ties up. Just a question.
Okay, so the reason why I think we'd need to take that offline just to get the exact reason and check with our DevOps team as to why we can't introduce that the footer at the bottom. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so where were we? Conversations. Okay, so conversations is a feature that's geared towards increasing collaboration and reducing those ad hoc discussions on project items. Now, conversations is a pane that appears on the right-hand side, but before we get into discussing how we start a conversation and reply, etc., let's pause for a moment and talk about some use cases as well as where to configure conversations. So a good use case for conversations, we can start with an issue. So an issue forms part of, and if you're thinking RAID, you're on the right path. RAID is a good example or a perfect example of using conversations because they typically bounce from an individual and require some conversation around them. So we're going to use an issue in our demonstration today, and here's a risk where a conversation has already occurred on that particular risk. But let's move over to some other use cases. For example, governance requirements. So what generally happens is a PM will engage with their PMO and discuss whether or not a governance requirement is required for their particular project. So you can have that discussion on the conversation pane. Another good example is demand. So prior to project initiation, perhaps you need some discussion around prioritization, or better yet, you want to rope an SME into the discussion to better understand the operational impacts of this demand item that you are reviewing. Okay, the next one, and this approvals we can talk about for the rest of the session. But with approvals, they can be attached to any entity item within PPO. And what typically happens with an approval record is it goes to the approver and can sometimes be declined and come back to the originator. Again, that bouncing back and forth, changing of status and changing of ownership between originator and approver. That can be avoided through the use of a conversation. So prior to declining Mary Exton's time entry approval that we have in front of us, we could talk to her about that particular time spent on the project, maybe include a line manager or a project manager and converse about that time. Time entry records, approval records can also be captured on projects to create gate approvals, as well as things like scope change approvals or document approvals. Perhaps you just want a sanity check from your team lead prior to submitting a project charter for stakeholder approval. You can request that sanity check via conversation, effectively reducing the need to send emails back and forth, having those ad hoc discussions of project items. Okay, so without further ado, let me show you where, as a PPO administrator, you configure conversations per entity. What you would do is you'd navigate to Administration, select System Configuration, scroll down to where you see Other Settings, and there's a setting called Entities that allow conversations. You'd simply select which entities you want to allow conversations to be had on, and you click on Submit. It's as simple as that for the PPO administrators to allow for conversations on an entity within your instance. So let's start with, how do I start a conversation? That's as simple as you click on New Conversation. Now, conversations is not a formal mechanism of conversing with your team. So you're not required to enter a subject. But for completeness sake, I've entered a subject, and to save on time, I'm just going to copy and paste some responses. On clicking Submit, we have now started a conversation as Barry Lineker. But with who, you might ask? Well, that's simply the employees listed on the entity in question. So Barry Lineker being the contact person and Tracy Murray being the issue owner. If we flip over to the other side, to Tracy's side, just quickly refresh my page, you'll note that she has now gotten a notification in the top right-hand corner via what we call our feed widget. Our feed widget lists all your notifications. You can dismiss or remove one of your notifications by using the binning icon, or you can dismiss all of them, hopefully once you've read all of them through the dismiss all button at the top. Once you've got the notification, you can click on the notification, which will take you through to the item itself. And in this situation, Tracy wants to respond with the fact that she's attached and linked the spec. Previously, Tracy would need to have linked the documentation via the linked documents functionality, but she doesn't need to do that because you can attach a file into the conversation by clicking on Attach File, browsing to where the file is, selecting the file and clicking on Open. She can also drag and drop the file into the conversation itself. What we highlight is the title of the document, as well as a status indicating it's done, it's busy uploading, or it's failed. When clicking Submit, the reverse has now happened. If we go to Barry's page, you'll see he'll be able to view that response. The notification hasn't come through yet. Let me just quickly refresh. There you can see the notification in his feed widget. But what he wants to do at this point is react to the conversation, specifically the reply that Tracy posted. He's got a choice of 6 reactions. I'm going to be kind and I'm going to use the heart emoji as my reaction. And the next step that Barry wants to carry out is extending who we are talking to or who we are conversing to, adding somebody else to the conversation. He simply clicks on reply, uses an @post to search for Manny. Yes, that's the correct Manny. And I'm going to quickly copy and paste the response here. There's our response and I click submit. We've included Manny now in the conversation and he's gotten his own notification in his feed widget. But we actually made a mistake. Not to worry, we have you covered with an edit reply icon in the top right of the reply. This allows you to edit the reply. And what we wanted to do initially was add a screenshot or an image. So I can use the add image icon to browse and open the file. I can also drag and drop the file into the response. I can even copy and paste. So a lot of our snipping tools use a copy paste mechanism. You can do that too with the image being added into the response. Now, before we submit this reply, one last thing I want to show you is the ability to add emojis. Emojis in Windows, so Windows users, if you push your Windows key and the full stop or the period symbol, it pops up this emoji window where you can select the emoji you want to use, which then gets added to your reply. I could then close that emoji window and click save. The shortcut for Mac users would be Control Command Space for the Mac users on the call. Now there's 2 more things I want to show you before we conclude or wrap up conversations in the feed widget. The first is the ability to delete. You can delete your reply, but you cannot delete somebody else's reply. However, because I am the conversation starter, so Barry Lineker started the conversation, he can delete the entire conversation after confirming one of PPO's pop-ups that he's sure he wants to delete it. So there's the entire conversation deleted. The last thing I want to show you is the ability to search. So you can use the search icon to search for a key phrase within the conversation. This conversation pertained to training facilities. We want to quickly grab what the cost is per training facility. So there we use the key phrase and the search functionality to do so. So that's conversations in a nutshell. So we've got 3 small items left to cover before we step into the Q&A time.
Do that. There's just a question, I think, from Devendra.
Sure thing.
Devendra, go
I
ahead.
typed it in the chat. I just wanted to know conversations when we delete it, obviously from the originator, is it archived in PPO or is it totally gone?
To my knowledge, it is
Deleted. It's totally
deleted. Yeah, totally
Deleted,
gone.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move over to the last 3 items. Okay, so the next one came through from a lot of our clients as a request. Sunlum and Pacific are the 2 clients that are sticking in my head at the moment. And that is the ability to freeze our headers, specifically our column headers. So what would previously happen is you'd be scrolling down your page 3/4 of the way and you'd forget what this column name was. You'd have to scroll back to the top to refresh that reference in your mind and say, okay, yes, this is the required document column and this is the status column. You no longer need to do that. But not only are we freezing our column headings, we're also freezing our paging buttons. as well as our action buttons. So 3/4 of the way or halfway through the page, you can still carry out a particular action, delete, edit, or move. You can still add a record from this point, but my personal favorite is when you right at the bottom of the page, you can just click on next to navigate to the second page. A small enhancement or a small feature that has a large value and makes PPO more user friendly. So on to the second last feature we're going to be demonstrating today, and that is the ability to sort the entities on your homepage as well as the entities on the project view page. So as a point of demonstration, we have issues that comes before projects. I want to swap it so that projects comes before issues. So the PPO administrators have the ability to go to administration, system configuration. If you scroll down, you will see the homepage settings. This now allows us to change the order of the entities visible on the homepage. We could remove entities and we could add entities. I'm going to pause here for a moment and remind you or explain the golden rule when it comes to adding entities to the homepage. The important part is that the entity contains some field dictating ownership. An issue, for example, has a contact person and has an issue owner, where a cost record has no employee listed on it that would dictate ownership. So the problem that you create when you add, for example, cost records to the homepage is because there's no ownership, we can't filter that view to show you only your cost records. We can filter that view to show you only your issues. And a byproduct of adding cost records or even comments and health indicators to your homepage is you expand the homepage in its length. So you bloat it with your cost records and comments and health indicators, which makes it a painful experience for users to scroll through. So remember that golden rule if you are adding an entity to the homepage. Okay, but now that we've changed the sort, we would simply click on submit. And now we can see projects is above issues. The other part of the feature is the ability to sort the entities on your project view page. So if we scroll down, we have health indicators followed by comments, issues, and documents. I just want to swap documents and issues around. Again, PPO administrators can go to system configuration. If you scroll down, you guys might have seen it earlier on. You've got the project view page settings that can be configured here. So we just want to swap documents and issues. We can add entities or remove entities. Be careful if you're removing a project related entity, especially if the user doesn't know how to get to that entity via the project's menu item, because effectively you'll be removing it from the project view page and they won't be able to see resource allocations except if they use the menu item to get there. So on submitting the change, we're going to go back to that sales recovery pilot project, scroll a bit down, and here you'll see documents and issues have been swapped around. Before I conclude this feature, I want to point out the fact that it's a global setting. So what that means is a user cannot set their own personal preference. So however it's set in system configuration for your homepage entities or the sort order of your entities visible on your homepage and the sort order of the entities visible on your project view page. However it's set there will apply to all users and the user cannot change it. So I'm going to use a bit of tongue in cheek here, and that is maybe what you should do is on one of your admin projects, add an issue to discuss the entities visible on the homepage and your project view page. Enable conversations on that issue and tag the individuals that would contribute to that discussion of what entities should we display. Then once you've got a agreement on which entities to use on the home page and the project view page, then the PPO administrator can then go and apply it. Okay, I see we're at 43 minutes, so I'm going to quickly go through the last change, which is specifically for our PPO administrators on the call, and we're not biased, we promise. What typically happens with what we call custom lists is they grow in length. So we land up with a lot of custom list items. A document type is a good example. And what happens when they grow in length in terms of a lot of items is we have to scroll, or we had to scroll, to the very bottom of the page to access the plus icon to add a new custom list item. We've moved that up to the top so that it's easier to add an additional custom list item without having to scroll down to the bottom. Small change that we believe is going to be valuable and make PPO more user-friendly for our PPO administrators. So I'm going to start wrapping up, and that is, I really hope that you guys find these features valuable and you continue to provide us with the feedback that you have been giving us with areas that you'd like to see change in PPO, perhaps something new you want to see introduced in PPO. I believe Lindy is going to cover our idea portal and where you can raise ideas. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much for everybody's time, and over to you, Lindy.
Thank you, Daniel. Are there any other questions? We did field quite a number of questions on the side. I don't know if there's anybody else that has any questions related to the features that Daniel has shown us. I don't see any other hands up. As Daniel just mentioned, I mean, what you guys are now going to have to go and do is figure out, you know, if you're looking at conversations, where would it make sense to activate conversations when you're looking at your environment? Would it make sense on risks? Would it make sense on actions? The other thing that you can also think about is sort of rethinking how your entities have been configured. So you could possibly even start thinking of removing input fields, making life again a bit easier for the users. And then, you know, rather using the conversation functionality to get some of the items resolved, mostly things that, you know, you're not too worried about in terms of history. But if there's anybody that needs any help in terms of guidance of, you know, where to set these up, because I mean, we've also been using it for a couple of months now, you can either reach out to me, to the support team, to your success manager, if you just need that little bit of guidance. Karen, I don't know if, or Daniel, I don't know if there was another question.
See, there's one popped up from Fawn. How do you activate the header? Sorry, not header, header freeze.
Header.
So that
It's already
it's
done.
been a long day. It's already done, so it's already activated on all of our instances. So you'll see it in effect with the next list page that you have to scroll through. Taryn was busy typing too.
Yeah,
Just a quick
I was.
Okay, I just quickly want to jump into some of the new things that are coming up. So I'm quickly going to share screen again. I'm just going to get onto a PPO instance. Okay, so there's 3 items that I'd just like to chat to you about, things that are coming up. Daniel's already mentioned one. But the first item, it's actually only in development with our DevOps team, and you guys should see it coming out sometime in December. I'm currently on a benefits list page here. So currently in PPO, we have no way, or a user doesn't have a way to specify the number of decimals for currency fields, integer fields, and percentage fields. So what our DevOps team are doing in the background is working on something that will give the admins the ability to specify on fields if you either want 0 decimals or 2 decimals. I don't know if everybody has felt that pain yet, But we have had many users, excuse me, asking for that, you know, over the last couple of months, even years. So that's the one item that we can look forward to in December. Daniel has already mentioned the key metric widget. So basically what you also see on our monitoring dashboard. So that will also be something that we can slot into our list pages and later on our home pages. So that we should 10 to 1 be seeing in the first quarter of the new year. And then the last thing that I just wanted to share in terms of functionality that's coming, I'm just quickly going to go to my project page. Excuse me. Okay, so currently we don't have the ability to filter on a RAG field. And I think Anne of Dovetail, you had the question, you know, can we build these charts for Project Health as an example? So that is something that we are also looking into, and we'll probably also see it in the first quarter of the new year. So if I just click in this filter control, you'll see I don't have the ability to filter on Project Health. I don't have the ability to filter on data quality or the governance RAG. So that's also something that we're introducing. So having the ability to filter it over here puts us in a position to build those sexy widgets on the side. So that's also something that is coming. I think just before I end off a couple of things, I just want to let you guys know that we have already put up our next webinar onto our website. I'll also show you where to get this, and I will share the link with you guys. Bronwyn, that's currently sitting on the bench with her injury, she's going to be taking us through how PPO supports various delivery approaches and also supporting project teams and you know, how they want to work. I think the last thing, we'll send this information over to all of you guys. Let me just have a look here. Okay, so I mean, the biggest thing that I just want to sort of ask you guys is, I mean, a lot of the functionality that we've showed you today is ideas that has come directly from our users. So I really want to encourage you guys to log ideas on our community portal. Myself, Guy, actually everybody at PPO, we're keeping a very close eye on those. And just as a reminder on how to log an idea for a new enhancement, into PPO, you basically just hover over the help icon and you click on log an idea. So anything that you can think of that'll make your life easier, give you a better user experience, please go ahead and log those ideas, and then we'll have a look into them and give you guys some feedback. Last one that I want to share. Just as a reminder, those of you that have not signed up to our blog yet, please do so. On our website, under company, you'll be able to register to our blog, and you also can draw into the events page. So you'll be able to see the upcoming events, you know, that we have scheduled. We've got our boot camps and all of those things. So please just have a look at that. Just quickly going to stop sharing here.
Thank you for a question from Devendra Lindy.
Go, Devendra.
Hi, Lindy. Hi, Lindy. I just wanted to know regarding the idea logging, right? Once the idea is logged, do we have a visibility of what's happening on that idea, which stage the idea is in? Is it accepted? Is it rejected? How do I get that information?
Yes, so once you log an idea, you should get an email on that. What we then do is we basically take that idea and we discuss it in our release management meeting with our DevOps guys. And then if we decide it's something that, you know, we are going to do, we're going to do it now, maybe later, we update those ideas on the portal and give it a bit of a status. So we'll say it's either planned or, you know, if it's something that, you know, we can't do, we'll say, you know, it's something that we can't do. But if we also provide hints on it, you will get notified via the community page.
Okay, thank you.
Comfortable? No problem.
We've got another question from Stanley. Can the donuts be used instead of bar charts and linear charts on reporting dashboards?
You want
So
me to?
Yeah.
So yes, Stanley, I mean, dashboards can be updated with various chart types. There's nothing stopping you guys from logging a request via the support desk and indicating on which dashboard you'd want the chart type to be changed to a donut type chart. So that can be done, and all you do is log that ticket.
Okay. One more thing. I didn't put my hand up, but one more thing is there any in the roadmap? Is there any way you are bringing up the customization of these dashboards on to the administrators or things?
So that's already available, Devendra. We introduced a BI API earlier in the year. Lindy, I'm not sure if you maybe just want to drop or share a link to that article as well as the video. So you can connect your PPO data to your BI reporting tool, and through that you can build your own reports and dashboards. I think we've got PG on the call that's already done that. There's quite a few clients that are doing some weird and wonderful things with the BI reporting tool. So that's already something you can do.
Okay, Taryn, I was aware of the BI tool. I'm still yet to play around with it, but I was thinking of the current things that we get customized from the support desk. Like Daniel is my contact person. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see how is that something that I can play around, because sometimes the request comes that can you just change this report this way? Then I need to depend on Daniel. But I understand I'll have to go for BI no other way. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully the chart widgets will probably break your dependency on changing your reports and dashboards often, and through the chart widgets you'll be able to get those graphical views, and each user can do that for themselves if you have varied requests of reporting requirements. And you using the BI API is as easy as even connecting Excel to it. So I mean, it doesn't have to be a fancy BI tool like Power BI or Click or Tableau. It works just as well with Excel.
I understand. Just that I've not got time to play around with it. Thank you. Yeah.
Usually the problem. Okay, great. Do we have any other questions? Okay, cool. Then I'm going to end of the session unless there's something else. Daniel, Taryn, from your side?
Happy. Thanks, Lindy.
Nothing from my side.
Thank you.
And everyone else, I mean, I'd encourage you guys to reach out to your SMs or even the support desk if you've got any questions or not sure how to use any of these features. Your SM and the support desk is more than willing to help.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for joining, and I really do hope that we see you in the next one.